Good morning and welcome. You're listening live to Heart-to-Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist in private practice located in Encino, California.
And I'm Dr. Robert Jaffe. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist as well. I'm here with Dr. Rashidian to share with you some of what we've learned over many years of study and practice, the goal of which is to feel more happy and loving and joyful every day of our lives. We always dedicate this program to you, our listeners, and we are here to let you know that you do contain within you everything you need to feel happy, joyous, and free. We are born into this world as our loving, authentic, true selves, which means we come in open, curious, honest, sexual, and trusting. And we also have the ability to be calm, emotionally available, and connected with others, as well as confident and compassionate.
Thank you, Dr. Jaffe, for that beautiful introduction, reminding us of the amazing God-given gift qualities that we all have within us.
Indeed.
And it's really important to all the time to remind us of those so that we can stay with our, happy side, confident side, and in particular during difficult times. I like at the beginning of our program to encourage those of you who are listening to us to call us and share your experiences during this time. Share us your questions, your comments, your feedback. Our phone number here live is 951-922-3532. That number again is 951-922-3532. You're also able to visit us at our YouTube channel, which is Heart, H-E-A-R-T -2-Heart, H-E-A-R-T .online/YouTube. We have free downloads for you that you can take home with you and review, and also share them with those that you believe they can benefit from reading over them. And then we welcome all comments and questions. And your contributions is really appreciated, because when you ask a question or share a comment, you're helping so many other people globally, and those who are listening to this program, however, are unable to contact us, they may share similar, questions with you. So we thank you in advance and we welcome you to our program. We appreciate the fact that, you're sharing your time with us. So, Dr. Jaffe, we have, we are in a difficult time of globally, basically. We are in a difficult time. There are so many new normals, right? There are so many new forms of understanding each other. And I know that you and I were going to talk about communication.
We are going to talk about communication.
Right.
I also wanted to add that the free download, is some information about the two parts of the human being, our ego and our spirit.
Exactly.
Right? Or our ego and our soul. And those parts of the human being are always there, and we always have a choice as to which one we're paying attention to. And we need both. The ego is about physical survival. The ego is about protection, and the protection of our physical self, of our bodies, the protection of other people's physical self and their bodies. And of course, that's very, very important, especially now with COVID-19. And the spirit is about connection. The spirit is about connecting with others. The spirit is about love. And the spirit is about connecting with God. And so when you're in spirit, you're feeling grateful, you're feeling appreciative, you're feeling joyous, you're feeling free. And that's very important to balance out us as human beings. As human beings, we are human, which is the ego, and we are beings, which is the spirit. And we need both in order to have a happy, joyous, free life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, the problem becomes when only ego takes over.
When ego takes over and we lose connection with the spirit part, we live in a constant state of anxiety, which is fear of the future. Right? And so we don't know what the future holds. Nobody knows what the future holds. Everybody likes to make a living predicting. But the truth is we don't know. But we do know that right now, most of us are okay in this particular moment. When we think about the future, then ego takes over and we can become very frightened. And when we become very frightened, that becomes contagious. And then we have a world full of fear, and that doesn't really serve anyone. It's one thing to be cautious. It's another thing to be fearful.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And now during this time, we are have a collaborative agreement, and I would call it collaborative agreement and not because, somebody told us to stay home, because I think we have all have a good understanding of the depth of a situation. And that's why, and I see, at least I see it in our area, how much people really have agreed with social distancing and how they have stayed home, and they are following all the protocols that have been recommended, suggested to do. And that's really, beautiful to see that collaboration among most people. I see it. And then those who are exempt, I see that how carefully they do their jobs as well. So this is a form of communication that we already have together, right? If we are able to maintain this kind of a collaborative, effective, positive, loving, communication by agreeing to a one big social policy that is pretty much detrimental to maintain right now. Imagine if we can have that kind of a power. How can we bring that positiveness into our communication within our family members right now that we have to stay home together? And we see that during this process, we get to see and we get to recognize and we get to notice some of the characteristics that we were not aware about, about each other, or we were aware, but we just never brought it up, or we were afraid to bring it up, or we had other concerns to point out to it. How we are communicating with our children. I mean, we really relied on school officials to do most of the work for us, but now we have to handle that. So it's pretty much completely, I would say, for the most part, it's a new culture. It's a new normal until further notice, right? How about the initial collaboration is beautiful, and this is how we are communicating with each other now. But we know that when we are home, all those, unspoken difficulties, all those challenges for communication, now we hear gradually, from our clients online, we hear that they are showing up, right? And then you and I were looking at different formats of communication, and then how we can recognize them and what we can do for them. Now that we actually have to face each other 24/7 for a period of time, right, whatever that is, right?
Right. And so what we have decided to talk about today is the three common modes of communication. Right. And
people may ask, really, we have three modes of communication?
We do. And I think I think everybody will relate to all three modes. Only one of which, however, is really productive. The other two are usually not productive in terms of helping us feel connected with the other person. And so we're going to label the three modes of communication. These aren't our labels, but these are labels that we have come across that we like to talk to people about. One is what we call collaborative, right? And that means we're all working together for the same purpose.
And that's exactly, what we do right now at the level of society, in a much larger society.
And that's what we need to do right now is have collaborative communication. And some of us are taught to do that, and some of us are taught to do other kinds of communication. And the other kinds that we're going to be talking about today are combative and cut off.
Wow.
Those are the three styles of communication. And I think you'll start to recognize your own style of communication as we talk about this, and recognize other people's styles of communication and see where it leads. So the goal of collaborative communication is a shared understanding. So when people are communicating collaboratively, the goal is to understand. And so when we're talking to somebody, the question would be, what do you mean by that? And then you're really listening to understand what they mean by that. You're not really listening to whether you agree or not at this point. You're simply listening to understand their point of view and to see what the validity is in their point of view.
Right, and there is judgment is not there. Questioning the motives and questioning the goals is not there. It's just about understanding and accepting where each person in the communication is.
And that's the primary first goal of collaborative communication, is just to understand. We also do a podcast, and I was saying on the podcast yesterday, we were talking about this also. And on the podcast, I was saying that there's an old quote that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. And so if you're communicating with somebody and the other person is talking and you're already thinking about how you're going to respond, then you're not fully listening to them. You're just waiting for airspace to voice your own thoughts or feelings.
Right. Years ago, now that we're talking, I remember one of the very first books that I started to read as part of my interest in psychology, and I was much younger. I'm talking maybe about 30 years ago. It's called Please Understand Me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a book that I always remember because it really referred to this, just understand me, and you don't have to say anything,
Yes.
Just get me where I am, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of people come into counseling, and for the first few sessions as a counselor, we don't say much of anything because the person needs to talk, because they have very few people that they can just talk with without the other person having to chime in and give them their opinion, which may not be needed or wanted at that particular time.
Right. So we are going to our commercial break at this time, and when we return, we will continue the concept of communication and the different forms of communication, and we will take it from there. See you soon.
See you soon.
Welcome back from our commercial break. For those of you who are just tuning into Heart-to-Heart, welcome. And we are talking about communication and healthy communication, and we are introducing different forms of communication. At this time, I'd like to encourage you to call us, please, and share your questions, your comments. Our number here live at the program is 951-922-3532. And when you call, please know that, this is not a therapy session. We're not going to engage you in a therapy kind of a communication because we don't believe that a few minutes is, good enough to do anything about the presenting problem. However, we are able to provide you with general, responses so that not only you can benefit from that, also others who are listening and may share the same concern as you do. You may also contact us privately at our private numbers or email us with your question should you want to have privacy when you come online instead of coming online. However, again, your contribution is highly valued and appreciated, and we invite you to also visit us at our YouTube program, which is Heart-2-Heart.online/YouTube. So welcome, and we will continue with our program today about communication, and we have been talking so far about collaborative form of communication.
Yes, and during the break, I mentioned that you had read a book called Please Understand Me.
Please Understand Me, yes.
Apparently, quite a while ago, you read the book.
About 30 years ago.
30 years, okay.
Yeah.
And what I said was that it would be great if every young child could be taught to say, please understand me, whenever they feel misunderstood or not responded to as they want to be responded to.
Exactly. So like you said, instead of making correction, but to understand where the behavior, where the attitude, where the understanding and belief comes from.
Right.
And then help the individuals to make adjustment there. I actually, have a client that, they stopped therapy with their therapist simply because they felt that each time they went to therapy, they were corrected, and then they said, well, that was not really working for us. I mean, correction, okay, but we want to know why we had that, form of, interaction with
Exactly,
each other,
exactly. Right? And a lot of parents, I think, focus on the old-fashioned way of child rearing, which is simply to focus on the behavior,
right,
and not really understand why the child is behaving the way they are, and get to the root of it so that the child can learn how to self-correct.
Exactly. And then, one thing that I see, and I don't want to get out of our subject, but just because we're talking about this, children, act out their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to express them. So it is our job to teach them, to work with them, to express their feelings versus acting them out.
Right. Children will act out through their behavior what their feelings are. And when you give them words to express their feelings, their behavior starts to shift in a positive direction.
Exactly.
So anyway, going back to our communication, we talked about that there's 3 ways of communicating. One is collaborative, the second is combative, and the third is cut off. And the goal of collaborative communication is a shared understanding. That's the first part of it. The goal of combative communication is to prove who is right and who is wrong. And the goal of cut-off communication is simply to avoid any conflict, because bringing up conflict means dealing with unpleasant feelings. So those are the 3 modes of communication. And when people are engaged in combative communication, they want to win. They see everything as a win-lose scenario, and they want to win the argument. But also they want to win, and they want to inflict as much damage as they can upon the loser. So the person who is trying to win will say negative things about the loser and try to make the loser feel horrible, because that makes the person who's communicating that they are right feel even stronger and larger. And unfortunately, that mode of communication has taken hold in our society recently, and we're here to say it's not the best way of communicating.
It's not. Basically, the mode is, what's wrong with the situation and who's to blame for it.
Right. Exactly.
So it's no self-responsibility or the ability to look at our own contribution to the situation. And we see that, in marriages a lot, that they say, well, if you wouldn't have done, this, or if we wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have get mad at you. right? I wouldn't have punched you in the face. I wouldn't have thrown things. I wouldn't have break things. I wouldn't have called your name. I wouldn't have done many negative things if you wouldn't have, somehow trigger something in me.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So there is no sense of taking responsibility over the action or the belief or the behavior.
Yeah, it's blaming other people for how you respond.
Right.
And
we see that a lot within couples.
We see that a lot within couples, and we see that a lot going on in society, unfortunately, where people say, well, he made me or she made me. Well, actually, nobody made you unless they actually literally held a gun or a knife to your throat. Then we can say, okay, they made me because they were threatening me to hurt me physically. But other than that, people don't make us respond in any way. We get to choose our responses. Now, do people have an influence on us? Absolutely. But do they have control over us? No. We are the ones who have control over ourselves. And when we abdicate that control and we blame other people and shift responsibility off of ourselves, we end up in what we call in psychology a codependent reality.
Exactly.
And we say in psychology that if you go to bed with someone and you're codependent on them, and you wake up in the morning, the first question you ask is, you say, "Good morning, how am I?" Because we get the other person gets to tell us how we are. Right.
I mean, we're laughing about this, but it's pretty sad.
It is.
It's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I like to point out is that once we have that attitude that one person continues to blame and one person, it becomes kind of combative communication. We see that we take that outside our, home environment, and we apply the same communication in the community, at our work, within our friends, and then at larger society. And we see it even now, the combative kind of communication with this pandemic that's going on, right? There are so many scientists that they are trying to work together, collaborate into finding a solution to this problem. And then there are a group who are just pointing fingers at each other and blaming each other.
Exactly.
Right? So this is a perfect example of combative, communication, which we learn that from childhood within our own family setting.
Absolutely.
And we take that up at the larger society and look at what's going on right now in society. Even though there's so many scientists are really desperately trying to find a solution. And then, so we know what's going on. It's all over the news, right? We don't need to bring it here.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to give you an example of how this kind of a communication, how they can expand across society, and it's not just limited to our home environment,
right.
But it starts from there.
Mm-hmm. And so when we see couples in couple counseling, and they are blaming each other, we see them literally pointing the finger, right? So the husband is pointing the finger at the wife. She's pointing the finger back at him. And the goal in couples counseling, the first goal before anything can really start to happen positively, is to get them to turn the finger around and to point at themselves, and to say, this is my contribution. This is what I'm doing. That's helping to create the problem.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I can demonstrate this on the camera right now, but I'm just going to try to do this. So when we point finger at each other like that, I like to turn this around and see how many fingers are pointing at myself, right?
Uh-huh.
So there are more fingers pointing at myself. So that means I myself have far more responsibility into what's going on, instead of just pointing one finger to the person that I want to blame for my own unhappiness. Right. So this is a famous, act in psychology that we do. So look at how many fingers, and I'm holding them with strongly, that I know what my responsibilities are, but I just choose not to look at them and just point at. And I'm pointing as Dr. Robert today.
Right. And then, of course, why do people do that, right? Because it's far easier to hope to change somebody else, because then you don't have to do the work, which is hard to change yourself.
Right.
To change ourselves, we need to do a lot of things in order to start thinking differently, which brings up different emotions, which then lead to different behaviors. So our thoughts lead to emotions, our emotions lead to behaviors. And to be able to change that takes some work, it takes some effort, and it takes a strong amount of desire.
So basically, we're referring to understanding and recognizing our own authentic true self, that across our growing up, because of the variety of psychological factors and growing up messages, it goes to hiding, and we operate based on our false self, which makes us unhappy. And then that unhappiness, because we are not able to connect the dots together. What makes me unhappy? We always look at external factors, and therefore we look at the closest person to us, and usually we start blaming them.
Right.
And then we get that because as children also we have been blamed a lot for or what is known or what was known as misbehaviors. You never sit, you never stay quiet, you never clean up, you never do this. So we learned that if we are unhappy, we can look at external factors and blame others versus looking at our responsibility of what making us unhappy. And that's because primarily we learn to neglect our own authenticity.
Mm-hmm. So the three areas of communication, the three styles of communication, we've said are collaborative, combative, and cut off. And collaborative, the goal, as I said, was shared understanding. It's also consensus building. So I want to understand where you are, and I want to understand where you and I agree, and I want to understand where you and I differ and see things differently. Whereas the combative is about smashing you. So when I'm in a combative style, I feel like I'm in a debate, and I'm going to use whatever means I have, including hurtful comments to you, to smash you, to keep you quiet, so that I win, because winning is the most important thing. Then the other part is cutoff communication. And when we're using cutoff communication because we believe that nothing good can come from disagreement, then we shy away from any sensitive areas. So we end up talking about things that are not really important. And if things start to heat up a little bit, we either say, well, I have to go, or, well, you just change the subject.
You mentioned winning. The concept of winning is really something that is very strong within this society. We form so many competitions. We encourage our children and even adults, at the school, at work, who's going to win, a project, who's going to win a game, who's going to win, who's going to be the first. And we give them trophies, we give them prizes and all of that. So the focus becomes on winning at all cost versus being on enjoying the ride, understanding what you're doing, how fun it is to start a project, how fun it is to participate in a game. And that kind of a collaboration, it goes in the hiding. Instead, focus stays on, I have to win to survive.
Right, and of course that is all ego.
Right.
What the ego does, because the ego is in charge of physical survival, the ego then believes that winning is important for its survival.
Right.
So that and that becomes the sole goal then of the communication.
And this is how we lose collaboration, the collaboration part of it.
Exactly.
Right.
So the tone of collaborative communication is positive. It's friendly, and it is productive because everybody gets a chance to voice what they believe and what their concerns are. The tone of combative communication is adamant, and it's an attempt to persuade, and it easily changes into irritability or anger. And the tone of cutoff communication is tense. You know that there's things that you want to say, but you're afraid to say them. So there's an underlying tension, and sometimes there's a false cheeriness, which kind of tells everybody everything is fine, but actually the underlying feeling is no, it's really not fine. And as you continue to move down the path of any of these, the collaborative, the combative, or the cutoff, it increases in both velocity and strength. So it becomes much more difficult to change the combative into the collaborative, because the person who's combative sort of digs in,
right,
and doesn't want it to be collaborative.
So we are about to go to our commercial break, and we will meet you back here shortly, and we will continue with this beautiful discussion during this difficult time, improving our communication method. See you soon.
See you soon.
Welcome back from our commercial break. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome to Heart-to-Heart. And we are talking about communication and different forms of communication. We would like for you to please join us and ask your questions. Call us at 951-922-3532 and visit us at our YouTube, heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. If you're interested to see our archive programs, please go to SoundCloud KMET 1490, go to playlist and look for Heart-2-Heart, and then they can download our prior programs. And then we look forward to hearing from you. We want to, know what we can offer you to make this hour for you more enjoyable and more productive. And we can only do that if you tell us what you need to hear. So thank you in advance for your contributions. And so, Dr. Robert, we
Yes.
were talking about collaborative, combative, cutoff communication. And we went through some of the shared goals, some of the, what's involved in each category, right?
Exactly. So a little more about that. Collaborative communication is really the purpose of listening to somebody is to hear what they're saying and to look for what's useful in what they're saying. So you're listening to hear the things that are useful about whatever the topic is. And so the first part is you're listening for agreement. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything, but there may be part of what they're saying that you can agree with. And even if you don't agree with, you can validate that it's a valid point of view. It doesn't mean that it's an either or, that there can be more than one valid point of view. So that's collaborative, when you let the other person know that, number one, they're not crazy for having that point of view, and number two, you're respecting them for expressing their point of view. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but you may look for things that you can agree with, and then begin there.
And also, when a person expresses their opinion, their thoughts, their feelings, their perceptions, through that safe environment of being able to listen to, they may actually have a chance to re-examine what they're saying, re-examine their ideas and say, I'm wondering what makes me think this way, or I'm wondering what makes me believe this way.
Right.
And then, so that safety that we provide to each other during collaborative communication, actually can become an eye-opening situation, an environment for us to examine and re-examine what we believe in, what's our perception, and then how we are operating based on those.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing about collaborative communication is you can view that the other person is sharing with you their thoughts and their feelings as a gift. If somebody is giving you a gift and they hand you the gift, and let's say it's all wrapped in a nice gift wrap, and it's got a bow on it. What do you say? You don't know what's inside the gift at that moment, but you say thank you, right? Now, let's say they're giving you a gift and you open the gift and you don't like what's in the gift. You still say thank you anyway, right? But then you take the gift and you say either, well, gee, thanks, this is not really something I can use. Perhaps you can use it yourself or give it to someone who needs it. Or you can say, well, thank you. I'm not sure if I'm going to need this or not, but I'll keep it. And then maybe you put it in a drawer.
And you can donate it.
Yeah, or donate it. But it's a gift. The person is sharing with you some of their perceptions. And when you view it that way, then you don't have to necessarily agree or not agree. You can just say thank you for the gift.
Yeah.
Now, that's a collaborative style of communication. But if you're in a combative style of communication, you're always listening to see whether you agree or disagree. That's the only thing that's important. And so then if you start to feel, even from the beginning or at any time during the other person's communication, that you disagree with them, you stop listening and then you immediately defend against what they've said. So you don't want to hear any more information. There's an old expression, my mind is made up, don't confuse me with facts.
Yes.
And that's what a combative communication is, right? It doesn't matter what the facts are, I've already made up my mind and I don't want to hear
I don't want
anymore.
to hear any more of what you have to say. I heard enough, right? That's what we say.
Yes. And then in cut-off communication, listening doesn't occur because neither party has expressed true feelings about anything, because they're both walking on eggshells, trying to maintain peace at all cost. So that's that style.
So one thing that I like to mention, because we opened the conversation with how during this situation that we are in, communication and knowing how to communicate with each other is really essential, since we are spending time together pretty much 24/7, right? And this is the time that we can listen to each other and understand each other's form of communication and see, oh, is this really what am I doing? Is this really what my partner is doing or my spouse is doing or my children are doing?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, how has this kind of a communication worked for us or didn't, right? So this is a perfect time to, in particular during this weekend, because it's going to be raining until Monday. So we are forced actually to stay indoor more than, the time that we can go out and take a walk. So maybe this is a good time to actually put these formats, form of communication into practice. If you are a cutoff, type of communicator, ask yourself, what stops you there? If you're a combative kind of a communicator, can consider, say, oh my, okay, what makes me be that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a collaborative form of communicator and then people around you that they are not, try to approach them that way so that they can see and experience a safe zone where they can express themselves also collaboratively. Because as much as we say that, these are divided form of communication with each other, but they can also overlap, and really realistically is the responsibility of the collaborative communicator to create that safety for everybody else to feel safe to come forward, right?
Yes.
That's a big responsibility, but that's the fact.
That's the way it works out.
Right.
So in psychology, we have an expression. We say we teach people how to treat us.
Right.
Right. And how do we teach them? We teach them through modeling. So we model who we want to be. And it was, I'm trying to think, somebody said, let's see, oh yeah. Be the change you want to be. You want to see in the world. Become the change you want to see in the world. That was Gandhi.
Gandhi. Yes. Right.
And what do we mean by that? That means here we're talking about a collaborative style of communication. So we want to instigate a collaborative style of communication to show other people that it's positive and that it's better than combative or cut off styles of communication.
Right. You had an example that you wanted to share.
Right. So Gerald and Mary are a couple, and they're just going through their day. And Gerald has just finished writing something, and he goes to throw it away, and the trash can in the kitchen is not there. And he looks around for it, and he searches for it for a moment, and then he says to Mary, "Mary, where's the trash can?" And when he says it, he's annoyed because the trash can they always keep in the kitchen at the same place. Now it's there. He didn't move it. The only person else in the house that could have moved it is Mary. So he's annoyed. So Mary, where's the trash can? And then Mary has a choice as to how she responds. Right?
Exactly.
So she can respond in a combative way and say something like, "Well, you know what? I moved it to take the garbage out because you never take the garbage out, and so I moved that. I guess I left it outside. But if you start taking the garbage out, you'd have the trash can in here."
So that becomes combative.
That's combative, right? Or she could do a cutoff style communication. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe I moved it. You know what? It's really time for dinner. Why don't you go wash up?"
Right.
So
we will deal with it later.
We will deal with it later, but
Yeah.
probably later is not at all.
Not at all.
Right.
Yes.
Or she can use a collaborative style of communication, and she can say, "Oh, you know what? I screwed up. I moved it out to empty it, and I guess I didn't put it back in. I'm so sorry, and it was my fault. I'll go get it for you if you want." And so she's then taking responsibility
Right.
for what happened, and she's diffusing it, and she's addressing his concern, and she's offering to make reparations.
And also she's empathic.
She's empathic. Yeah, I did screw up.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, collaborative communication involves taking responsibility, which means, guess what, guys? The ability to say, "I made a mistake," or "I apologize." Guess what? That's really a positive thing.
Yes.
Because when you say, "I made a mistake," or "I apologize," you're taking responsibility, and you're not, and the other person gets to feel validated. And they need to feel validated because it wasn't their fault to begin with.
Right. And then, that is, of course, if, for example, you're the Mary and you have actually left the trash can outside.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not saying that if you haven't done it, okay, then take responsibility for something that you haven't done. If you haven't done it and you yourself, for example, don't know where the trash can is, they say, "Oh, gee, Gerald, I'm not sure where the trash can is. But, maybe you and I can look for it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of us misplaced it, put it somewhere, but at this point, I'm not remembering. However, I'm happy to help you to take care of this."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's, if you have done it, then you say it. If you haven't, if you have no clue about what it is, offer help and support.
Right.
So that, the two people can collaboratively look for what's missing or misplaced. And then there are thousands and thousands and thousands of these examples, and every family member, every couple, every relationship, they have their own stories. So within those stories, I think you are now able to see whether you're holding a cutoff form of communication, or a combative one, or a collaborative one. And it is really easy to be able to switch back to collaboratively. And if if you don't know how to do that, there are help out there that that you can be helped by.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to continue talking about communication next week.
Absolutely.
And because this is a very, very large topic. And one last thing I want to say about communication is it's important to be direct but tactful.
Right.
So you want to say the truth, but you want to say it in a way that's designed to not offend the other person. Well, why don't you want to offend the other person? Well, it's the golden rule, right? do unto others as you want them to do unto you? Do you want people to talk to you in a way that downplays your own thinking abilities, downplays you as a human being, or do you want the person to talk to you respectfully? So indirect communication leaves the other person a little confused. So someone may say, "Gee, isn't it hot in here?"
Mhm.
And then the other person may say, "No, it's not hot in here," rather than the person saying directly, "You know what? I'm hot." Right? Because then they're taking responsibility, and then the other person can say, "Oh, well, if you're hot, let's do something about it."
Right.
Right?
And also, it's important to recognize that sometimes it's difficult to get people to understand their form of communication. And then this is a part that we're going to be addressing the next time we meet next week here, Friday at 9 a.m. at KMET Live. And we wish you safety, happiness, health, and be well. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself during this difficult time. We appreciate you, sharing your hour with us. And until next time we meet, don't forget that all you need is love.
All you need is love. Love and desire to give and receive love to others.
Yes.
And that's what we have an opportunity to do now.
Have a blessing weekend.
Have a good week.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.